There are moments in life when a simple question begins to echo louder than all others. Is this person truly meant to be in my life? We often ask it when standing face to face with a lover, but the truth is, this question extends far beyond romance. It touches friendships that have carried us for years, business partners who share our ambitions, mentors who shape our paths, and even strangers whose sudden presence feels anything but accidental. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist whose ideas changed the way we see the human psyche, believed such encounters were never random. For Jung, the people who enter our lives are not accidents of chance, but reflections of forces working quietly in our unconscious. Each connection, whether fleeting or lifelong, is a mirror that reveals something hidden about ourselves. Think about the times you've met someone and felt that unmistakable spark, a resonance that bypasses reason and plunges straight into intuition. You may explain it away as chemistry or dismiss it as coincidence, but Jung would call it a signal, a reminder that the outer world and the inner world are constantly in dialogue. But here is the difficulty. Not every relationship that arrives at the right moment is the right one. Some connections feel destined, yet they lead us into storms of conflict and disillusion. Others arrive quietly, without grandeur, yet end up shaping the very core of our lives. How do we tell the difference between fate's cruel trick and fate's genuine gift? To answer this, Jung argued that we must look not outward, but inward. If we surround ourselves with people who drain our strength, belittle our worth, or trap us in endless cycles of conflict, it is rarely mere misfortune. Rather, it is our unconscious calling us to pay attention, to recognize the part of us that tolerates or even seeks out such patterns. This truth, unsettling as it may be, has echoed throughout history. Monarchs have chosen allies who mirrored their own hidden weaknesses, only to watch their kingdoms collapse. Generals have trusted companions who, beneath the surface, reflected their own unresolved fears and paid the price on the battlefield. In a more intimate sphere, countless marriages throughout history were arranged not out of love, but duty, and often revealed the unconscious needs of families, dynasties, and nations, rather than the individuals themselves. And so the central dilemma remains. When we meet someone who stirs something powerful in us, how can we know whether they are aligned with our true self or merely with our unresolved wounds? Jung's answer was both simple and profound. The right connection does not demand that you betray who you are. It does not require that you silence parts of your soul, shrink to fit into another's mold, or carry the endless burden of performance just to be seen. Instead, the right connection feels like a homecoming. It makes you more yourself, not less. As history has shown us, from the great partnerships that built civilizations to the quiet friendships that sustained artists, writers, and thinkers through their darkest hours, the people who are truly meant for us are those who bring clarity, expansion, and balance, not chaos. They are not perfect, nor are we, but together the connection flows without constant battle. This is where our journey begins, with the recognition that every bond in our lives is a reflection of something within us, and only by daring to look inward can we distinguish the fleeting illusions from the rare connections that are truly meant to last. Jung gave a name to those mysterious encounters that feel charged with meaning: synchronicity. He described it as the moment when the external world and our internal world align perfectly, producing coincidences so striking that they can no longer be dismissed as chance. Perhaps you've felt it before. You meet a stranger who seems to echo your own thoughts, almost as if they had been walking alongside you in silence for years. Or you stumble upon someone at the exact moment you are facing a turning point in life, a mentor appearing when you are uncertain, a friend when you are lonely, a partner when you are ready to grow. These are not mere accidents. They are signals, Jung would say, from a deeper order of reality, a web that connects the unseen layers of our existence. History is filled with such examples. In 1876, Alexander Graham Bell filed his patent for the telephone. on the very same day that Elisha Gray submitted a similar invention. Was it rivalry or synchronicity? Humanity's unconscious readiness for a new way to connect. Think also of the chance meeting of young Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels in Paris. They could have remained strangers, but their encounter ignited an intellectual partnership that reshaped global politics. These stories remind us that synchronicity does not only operate in private lives, but also on the grand stage of history. In personal terms, synchronicity can feel almost mystical. Two people meet, and suddenly life takes a different course. It's as though the universe nudges us, whispering that this encounter carries weight, that it is part of a larger pattern we cannot yet see. But synchronicity does not guarantee ease or harmony. Sometimes the people who appear in synchronistic moments are not soulmates in the romantic sense, but catalysts, mirrors sent to awaken us, to challenge us, to force us into growth we would otherwise resist. Think of a teacher who arrives when you are desperate for guidance, or a rival who awakens in you a strength you did not know you possessed. In mythology, these figures are everywhere. Hermes guiding heroes at crossroads, or the sudden appearance of a wise stranger in folk tales who offers the cryptic advice that later proves essential. These patterns in myth mirror the same phenomenon Jung described, that meaningful encounters are part of a hidden dialogue between the psyche and the cosmos. And yet the danger remains. How do we know if synchronicity is guiding us toward truth or toward illusion? Not every spark of connection is a flame meant to last. Sometimes it is only a flash of light designed to reveal what lies in our own shadow. Jung insisted that the key was not to chase synchronicity for its own sake, but to cultivate awareness. The moment loses its magic if we cling to it desperately, demanding permanence from what was meant to be transient. What matters is not the coincidence itself, but what it awakens within us. A synchronistic encounter might last a single conversation or a lifetime, but in both cases, its real purpose is to draw us closer to ourselves. So the question becomes, the next time life places someone in front of you at just the right moment, will you see it as mere chance? Or will you pause to ask, what truth within me is this person here to reveal? Jung believed that our relationships are not random entanglements, but mirrors of the unconscious. Each person we draw into our orbit reflects back something about ourselves, sometimes our hidden strengths, sometimes our deepest wounds. If you notice yourself surrounded by people who constantly undermine you, belittle your worth, or drain your spirit, Jung would insist that this is not a cruel accident of fate. It is your unconscious staging a lesson. It is saying, look within. What unhealed part of you allows, tolerates, or even seeks out this cycle? The idea may sound unsettling, even unfair. But consider this. Our minds are constantly shaping the world around us. A person who secretly believes they are unworthy will unconsciously gravitate toward those who confirm that belief. A person haunted by fear of abandonment may repeatedly choose partners who leave them, not because they want the pain, but because their unconscious is trying to resolve a wound that never healed. Modern psychology echoes Jung's insight. Attachment theory tells us that the way we bonded, or failed to bond, in childhood shapes the relationships we seek as adults. Anxious attachment may drive someone to cling to unavailable partners. Avoidant attachment may lead another to push away intimacy at the very moment they crave it. In both cases, the external drama is a reflection of the inner script. History, too, provides striking examples. Consider Henry VIII of England. His relentless pursuit of wives was not simply a matter of producing heirs, but also a projection of his own inner restlessness, insecurity, and fear of mortality. Each queen became a mirror of his unresolved psyche, and his kingdom bore the consequences. Or look to Napoleon Bonaparte, whose partnerships with allies often mirrored his own arrogance and hunger for control. The allies he chose, and later betrayed, were reflections of qualities he both embodied and feared. On a more intimate scale, all of us know the ache of repeating cycles. The friendship that feels strangely similar to the last one. The romance that begins differently but ends in the same heartbreak. The business partner who turns out to echo the flaws of a former collaborator. These repetitions are not coincidences. They are signals. Our unconscious seeks balance, even if it drags us through the same fire until we finally learn to step away. To truly see others as mirrors requires courage. It demands that we ask ourselves hard questions. Why do I feel unseen? Why do I feel silenced? Why do I find myself again and again in relationships where I must fight to prove my worth? And the most difficult question of all, what part of me believes this is all I deserve? But there is liberation in this idea as well. If relationships are mirrors, then by changing the way we see ourselves, we change the people we attract. The moment we begin to value our own worth, the mirror shifts. The cast of characters in our lives begins to transform. The faces that once reflected rejection are replaced by those who reflect respect, compassion, and genuine love. In this sense, every painful relationship, every repeated cycle, is not a punishment but an invitation, a chance to walk through the mirror and meet ourselves more honestly. Not every spark of attraction is a flame meant to last. Some connections dazzle us with intensity at first, but fade into shadows once the illusions break apart. Jung warned that when we mistake projection for truth, we risk clinging to people who only mirror our wounds, not our wholeness. A true connection does not demand that you betray your essence. It does not require you to silence your voice, compress your dreams, or shrink to fit someone else's mold. When someone is aligned with you, their presence will not feel like a constant struggle for survival. Instead, there will be a quiet ease, a sense that you can breathe fully without fear of judgment. By contrast, illusions thrive on performance. They keep you on edge, convincing you that love must be earned through endless effort, that affection is conditional, that you must play a role to stay worthy. Over time, the tension of such a bond erodes the soul. What looks like passion becomes exhaustion. What felt like destiny becomes a cage. Cultures across history have wrestled with this difference between genuine and false alignment. In medieval Europe, marriages were often arranged for wealth or alliance, not love. Many of these unions became lifelong battles of survival between two people who were never truly aligned. Yet scattered throughout history are also stories of rare matches where partnership became not a chain but a source of strength. Think of Queen Victoria and Prince Albert, a union where mutual respect and intellectual companionship shaped not only their private lives but also the culture of an era. In Eastern traditions, too, the idea of misaligned versus harmonious connections is embedded in philosophy. Confucian teachings warned against relationships that pulled one away from virtue and harmony, insisting that true bonds must align with moral order. In Hindu philosophy, there is the concept of karmic ties, where some relationships arise not to fulfill us, but to help us burn through lessons we have resisted. Even literature is filled with contrasts between illusion and truth. Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet burns bright with intensity, but ends in ruin, a portrait of youthful projection mistaken for eternal destiny. Meanwhile, in Pride and Prejudice, Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy only find genuine connection once illusions fall away, revealing respect and authenticity underneath. The lesson is clear. Illusions may excite us with their fire, but true connections endure with their light. They do not consume, they illuminate. So how do we distinguish between the two? Jung's advice was not to ask, does this person complete me? But rather, do I remain myself when I am with them? If a relationship requires you to abandon your essence, it is a performance, not a partnership. If it allows you to grow into your fullest self, it is something real. The tragedy of many lives is not that we never encounter truth, but that we cling to illusions long after they have revealed themselves. And yet, in that tension lies the most powerful invitation: to choose differently, to walk away from what drains us, and to make space for the bonds that sustain us. At the heart of Jung's philosophy lies a single, profound process: individuation. It is the journey of becoming who you truly are, of peeling away the masks imposed by society, family, or fear, and uncovering the authentic self beneath. For Jung, this was not a luxury but a necessity. Without individuation, we remain trapped in cycles of projection, repeating the same patterns in our relationships, unable to recognize genuine connection when it appears. To individuate means to stand in your own center. It is the courage to no longer play roles to please others, but to live in alignment with your essence. And it is only when you take this path that you begin to draw into your life people who resonate with your truth. In Jung's words, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Individuation is precisely the act of making the unconscious conscious. History offers countless echoes of this truth. In ancient Greece, initiation rites, such as the Eleusinian Mysteries, were not mere rituals but symbolic deaths and rebirths, designed to strip away superficial identity and awaken the deeper self. Among many indigenous cultures, rites of passage, vision quests, isolation in the wilderness, ceremonial trials, served the same purpose: to confront the shadows within and emerge transformed, ready to live authentically within the tribe. Even in the medieval world, pilgrimages often functioned as journeys of individuation. To walk hundreds of miles toward a holy site was not simply an act of piety, but an opportunity to shed old identities, encounter one's limits, and return with a new sense of self. The external journey mirrored the inner one. In modern times, individuation can look less dramatic, but no less essential. It may mean leaving a career chosen to satisfy others and pursuing work that aligns with your soul. It may mean breaking a family cycle of silence, finally speaking truths that were buried for generations. It may mean choosing solitude over toxic companionship, even when society insists that being alone is failure. Relationships without individuation are fragile because they are built on masks. When you are not yourself, you cannot truly see or be seen. But when you step into authenticity, something extraordinary happens. The people who belong to your story begin to recognize you. It is not magic. It is alignment. They appear not because the universe suddenly changes, but because you are finally able to notice them, to welcome them, to distinguish their authenticity from the illusions you once clung to. Think of it this way: a melody played out of tune will never harmonize with an orchestra, no matter how hard it tries. But once it is tuned to its true pitch, harmony becomes effortless. Individuation is the act of tuning your own instrument. Only then can the music of genuine connection arise. This is why Jung insisted that the question is never first, who is right for me? But am I right for myself? Until you have answered that, every relationship is at risk of being a performance of your shadows rather than a reflection of your essence. But when you have begun the journey of individuation, you will find that the people who stand beside you do not demand your disguise. They call forth your truth. Jung believed that the unconscious is not a passive reservoir of forgotten memories, but an active force, always striving toward balance. When we stray too far from authenticity, when we refuse to acknowledge our wounds or persist in relationships that diminish us, the unconscious does not remain silent. It sends signals, subtle at first, then louder, until we can no longer ignore them. You may have experienced this, the quiet unease that lingers after every conversation with a certain person. The sudden wave of exhaustion when you spend time in a relationship that feels more like a battlefield than a sanctuary. Perhaps even the physical toll, insomnia, tension in the body, unexplained fatigue. These are not random afflictions. They are the psyche's way of crying out. Something is misaligned. Jung compared this process to the body's immune system. Just as fever warns us of an infection, emotional turmoil warns us of a psychic imbalance. Yet modern life often teaches us to dismiss these signs. We drown them in distraction, call them stress, or numb them with busyness. But the unconscious is persistent. What begins as a whisper can grow into a scream. Left unheeded, it can shape our choices, draw us into the same destructive patterns, even manifest in physical illness. Cultures across time have recognized this link between imbalance in relationships and imbalance in health. In ancient Chinese medicine, harmony between yin and yang was considered essential for well-being. A life filled with toxic connections was seen as a path to both emotional and physical sickness. In many indigenous traditions, illness was not just a biological event, but also a spiritual one, a sign that the individual had drifted away from balance with self, community, or nature. History offers vivid examples of leaders who ignored such signals. Consider the later years of Emperor Nero of Rome. Surrounded by sycophants and rivals, he grew increasingly paranoid, restless, and ill. His descent into chaos was not just political, but deeply psychological. His inner imbalance reflected outward until it consumed his empire. On the other hand, Marcus Aurelius, though plagued by war and illness, found balance by cultivating inner discipline through Stoic philosophy. His journals reveal a man who sought harmony within himself as the world crumbled around him. The unconscious does not punish us out of cruelty. It seeks to restore equilibrium. When we pursue relationships that suffocate us, it creates anxiety to wake us up. When we ignore our intuition, it stirs conflict to force our attention. When we settle for a life out of tune with our essence, it manifests discomfort to guide us back. The choice is always ours. We can treat these signals as nuisances to be silenced, or as messengers pointing the way to change. Jung insisted that healing begins not by silencing the unconscious, but by listening to it. To ask, what truth is my anxiety pointing to? What imbalance is this fatigue trying to reveal? What part of me longs to be heard through the chaos of this relationship? Seen this way, pain is not the enemy. It is a compass. It is the unconscious insisting that life must move toward balance, whether we resist it or not. For Jung, the most profound relationships were not built merely on compatibility or convenience. He believed that true connection happens when souls recognize each other. At first glance, this may sound mystical, even romanticized, but beneath the language lies a deep psychological truth. Some people awaken in us a sense of familiarity that transcends explanation. Think of those encounters where you feel as if you've known someone far longer than the calendar allows. Conversation flows effortlessly, silences are comfortable, and their presence evokes both safety and possibility. Jung argued that this resonance is no accident. It is the unconscious signaling that a profound alignment has occurred. Yet soul recognition is not always about comfort. Sometimes it arrives as a challenge. A person enters our life and unsettles us, pushing us to grow, forcing us to face fears or illusions we would rather avoid. In mythology, these figures are everywhere. The teacher who appears at the hero's darkest moment, the rival whose presence sharpens skill, the lover whose absence awakens longing that reshapes destiny. These figures, whether in epic stories or in our own lives, embody the same principle. Certain encounters are catalysts. They awaken something sleeping within us. History echoes with examples. Consider how Socrates' relentless questioning provoked both admiration and hostility in Athens. To his students, he was a soul-recognized teacher, a mirror reflecting truths they could not ignore. Or look to the correspondence between Rainer Maria Rilke and Lou Andreas Salome. Their connection was not a romance in the conventional sense, but a spark of recognition that shaped Rilke's art and spiritual vision for life. Such bonds remind us that soul recognition may take many forms: teacher and student, rivals, collaborators, or lovers. In Eastern philosophy, too, the concept is ancient. The Hindu notion of karma suggests that people we meet are tied to us by past actions, returning to teach lessons unfinished. Plato, centuries earlier, imagined souls split in half, wandering the world until they find each other again. Norse mythology spoke of weird, the unseen threads that bind lives together across time. Across cultures, the idea recurs that certain encounters are woven into the fabric of fate. But here lies the essential distinction. Recognition does not guarantee permanence. Some souls are meant to walk beside us for a lifetime, others only for a season. The value of the encounter lies not in its duration, but in its impact. A fleeting connection that awakens authenticity may be more valuable than a long relationship that keeps us asleep. The challenge, then, is discernment. How do we tell whether a soul-recognized bond is one to nurture for the long road or one to release with gratitude once its purpose is fulfilled? Jung's guidance was simple yet profound. The right connection deepens who you are. It does not diminish you. It invites growth without demanding betrayal of your essence. It leaves you more whole, not less. So when you encounter someone who stirs something in the depths of your being, pause and ask, does this connection expand me, or does it confine me? Does it awaken my truth, or does it bind me to illusion? The answer to that question is the compass by which we can tell soul recognition from soul deception. Jung taught that much of what we see in others is not truly about them at all. It is about us. This is the phenomenon of projection. When aspects of ourselves remain hidden in the unconscious, we cast them outward, painting others with the colors of our own shadows. Think of the times you have felt deeply unappreciated in a relationship. Perhaps you believed the other person did not see your worth, that they overlooked your efforts, that they demanded more than you could give. These may have been true, but Jung would also ask you to look deeper. Do I myself truly value who I am? Am I projecting my own neglect onto another? Projection often explains the intensity of our relationships. The overwhelming admiration we feel for someone may reflect a quality we have not yet recognized in ourselves. The irritation we feel toward another may mirror traits we secretly deny or fear within. In this sense, every relationship becomes a stage where the hidden parts of the psyche perform until we are ready to bring them into consciousness. History is filled with the destructive power of projection. During the witch trials of Europe, women were accused of harboring dark powers, yet often what society feared were the shadows it refused to face: sexuality, independence, and knowledge outside male authority. In politics, leaders have projected their inner fears onto enemies, turning personal insecurities into national crusades. Consider how Stalin, consumed by paranoia, saw traitors everywhere. His own shadow magnified until it swallowed millions of lives. Literature, too, abounds with this theme. Shakespeare's Othello is destroyed not only by Iago's lies, but by his own projection of insecurity onto Desdemona. He cannot see her innocence because his own shadow of doubt blinds him. In Frankenstein, Mary Shelley's creature becomes the projection of Victor's suppressed fears and ambitions, a mirror of what he refuses to acknowledge in himself. But projection is not always destructive. It can be a guide. The admiration you feel for someone's courage may be your unconscious reminding you of your own dormant bravery. The envy you feel toward another's freedom may be an invitation to claim your own. Jung insisted that the key is awareness. The moment we recognize projection, its power dissolves. What once seemed external is reclaimed as part of our inner landscape. This does not mean tolerating harmful behavior. If someone treats you cruelly, it is not your fault. But even in such moments, asking, "Why did I stay? What part of me believed I deserved this?" can reveal a hidden wound that longs to be healed. The unconscious is not cruel, it is insistent. Through projection, it forces us to confront what we would rather avoid. And until we do, we will keep calling it fate. We will meet the same characters in different bodies, repeat the same heartbreaks in different disguises, until we finally recognize the shadow not in them, but in ourselves. To love consciously is to see through projection, to ask not only, "Who is this person?" but also, what is this person showing me about myself? Only then can relationships become not prisons of repetition, but doorways to growth. Jung often reminded us that the unconscious repeats its lessons until they are learned. This is why so many of us feel trapped in cycles, the same type of partner, the same arguments, the same painful endings. To the conscious mind, it feels like misfortune. To the unconscious, it is a lesson unlearned. Imagine standing before two doors. The first is familiar. It leads back to the patterns you already know, the relationships that drain you, the battles you fought 100 times. It is painful, yes, but predictable. You know how this story ends, even if you tell yourself it will be different next time. Most people, Jung observed, choose this door again and again because its pain feels safer than the uncertainty of change. The second door is different. It opens onto the unknown. To walk through it means leaving behind what no longer serves you. It means stepping away from illusions, breaking the cycle of projection, and risking solitude until something truer arrives. It is frightening because the path beyond it is uncharted. But it is also the only path that leads to transformation. History offers striking portraits of these two doors. Consider King Henry VIII once more. Faced with his fear of dynastic failure, he chose the first door repeatedly, cycling through marriages, repeating betrayals, demanding loyalty he himself could not give. His life became a spiral of repetition, destroying those around him and leaving his kingdom in turmoil. By contrast, think of Siddhartha Gautama, the prince who would become the Buddha. Surrounded by luxury and comfort, he dared to open the second door, leaving behind wealth, family, and familiarity in search of truth. His step into the unknown reshaped not only his own destiny, but the spiritual landscape of half the world. The same principle holds in our private lives. A woman may stay in a relationship where her worth is constantly questioned because the thought of being alone terrifies her more than the daily pain of being diminished. A man may choose partners who mirror his childhood wounds because to risk something new feels unbearable. These are the first doors, predictable pain disguised as safety. But those who gather the courage to choose the second door discover something astonishing. At first, it may feel like loss, some mess, the absence of the familiar, the silence where chaos once lived. Yet in that silence, something else emerges, clarity. And in clarity, the possibility of love that does not require disguise, performance, or self-betrayal. Jung would say that the second door requires shadow work, the courage to face the wounds that made us cling to repetition in the first place. Without this work, we will circle back to the first door, even if we convince ourselves we've chosen differently. True change is not merely walking away from someone else. It is walking toward the hidden parts of ourselves. And so the real question becomes, which door will you choose? The one that repeats the past, or the one that dares to create a different future? In the end, Jung's message about love and relationships can be distilled into a simple but radical truth. Before you can find the right person, you must first become the right person for yourself. All of our searching, all of our longing for someone to complete us, will only lead us back into cycles of projection unless we begin the journey inward. Authentic love is not about dependency. It is not about filling a void, silencing loneliness, or securing constant reassurance. It is about two individuals who have learned to stand in their own wholeness, meeting in recognition rather than in need. When this kind of connection appears, it does not demand endless proof or sacrifice. It flows with a quiet certainty, a peace that does not require explanation. This is why Jung insisted that the most important relationship is the one you cultivate with yourself. When you see your own worth clearly, you no longer tolerate those who diminish it. When you accept your shadows, you no longer project them blindly onto others. When you recognize your own patterns, you no longer call them fate. And in that shift, the relationships that enter your life change as well. History reminds us of this lesson. Think of Eleanor Roosevelt, who transformed from a shy, overshadowed young woman into a force of political and humanitarian power. Her marriage to Franklin Roosevelt was complex and imperfect, but it was her individuation, her becoming herself, that allowed her to shape history on her own terms. Or consider the poet Rumi, whose meeting with Shams of Tabriz awakened not dependence, but an eruption of authenticity that poured into timeless verse. Their connection was real, not because it lasted forever, but because it expanded the soul. Authentic love is not about intensity that burns us to ash. It is about clarity that sustains us. It is not about someone demanding that we change who we are, but about someone whose presence encourages us to become even more ourselves. So ask yourself, do the connections in my life leave me smaller, or do they allow me to expand? Do I feel constantly at war within, or do I feel at home in my own skin when I am with this person? These questions reveal more than any declaration of love ever could. And if at this moment you have not yet found such a connection, do not despair. The absence of the right one is not failure, it is opportunity. It is an invitation to strengthen the most essential bond of all, the bond with yourself. For it is only when you are at peace within that the right connections appear without. Jung reminded us that life is a mirror. What you are within is what you will encounter without. The people who step into your path are not random. They are reflections, teachers, companions for a stretch of the road. Some will stay, others will go, but each will reveal something essential about who you are becoming. And when the right person finally arrives, you will know, not because they fit a list of requirements, not because they fulfill an ideal, but because their presence brings peace, clarity, and recognition. You will not need to perform. You will not need to fight for love. You will simply be yourself. And in that authenticity, you will find the connection you have always sought. That is the path to authentic love. And it begins not with searching outward, but with the courage to look within.